I was in the prep kitchen, sweat sticking my hair to the back of my neck. It was the night before the final Golden Whisk competition. The biggest moment of my culinary career. My station was a mess of herbs and reductions. My focus absolute. Then, my phone buzzed on the steel shelf. It was a text from my mother. Kimberly. Honey. Dad and I can't close the restaurant for your competition. We have to launch Lauren's new wine menu that same night. It's just unfortunate timing. We'll celebrate with you after... I stared at the screen. Unfortunate timing. Seconds later. Another notification. My sister, Lauren, 21, had just posted a glittering selfie on Instagram. The caption, "Big night. So excited for the launch. Have you ever been forced to become invisible so someone else could shine? Let me know your story down in the comments." I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I looked at the text message. Then, at my own faint reflection in the stainless steel door of the prep kitchen fridge. My eyes were tired. I glanced at the menu plan I'd pinned to the wall, a safe, modern, deconstructed dish designed to impress the judges, and, if I'm honest, to finally get the approval of my parents. I took a deep breath, the smell of bleach and old thyme filling my lungs. Then I picked up my phone and typed back a simple, two-word reply. Enjoy the launch. I didn't wait for an answer. I powered my phone off and slid it into my locker. Then, I walked over to my prep plan, ripped it off the wall, and threw it in the trash. From the bottom of my bag, I pulled out a heavy, leather-bound notebook. The cover was cracked and stained. The pages yellowed. It was my grandmother Evelyn's recipe book. I flipped past the easy stuff, past the restaurant's current menu, to a page near the back. One stained with what looked like wine and butter. It was her signature dish. A complex, classic heritage stew. The one my father, Brian, called peasant food, and my mother, Kimberly, called too old-fashioned for their brand. A cold, decisive smile touched my lips. This would be my retaliation. To understand why, you have to understand my family. In our family restaurant back in Oregon, you were one of two things. You were either front of house or back of house. Front of house was where the spotlight lived. It was laughter. It was charisma. It was shaking hands with politicians and charming the wine critics. My little sister, Lauren, was born for the front of house. I was born in the back. I was the smell of onions and hot metal, the clang of pots, the quiet hum of the walk-in freezer. I was the one who knew how to fix the dishwasher when it choked, how to break down a whole hog, how to make the sauces that my father proudly sent out to the dining room. I was the engine, hidden in the dark. I still remember my 12th birthday. It was a brutal Saturday night shift. I'd been on the dish pit for 4 hours. My hands were off. When my parents finally brought out a cake from the cooler, the dining room burst into song. I dried my hands on my apron and walked out, assuming, just for a second, it was for me. But the cake, a beautiful 3-layer confection, had thick pink icing that read, "Congratulations, Lauren." My sister had won a middle school public speaking competition that week. I stood there, smelling like dish soap, as everyone clapped for her. My mom, Kimberly, saw my face and hurried over, giving me a gentle pat. "Oh, honey, we just thought we'd use this one for both. It's just easier than getting two. You know, go ahead and blow out a candle." So I did. I clapped for Lauren with everyone else, and ate a slice of her congratulations. But the real symbol of my place in the family wasn't a cake. It was table number 1. Table number 1 was the big, round oak table in the center of the dining room. It was reserved for us, the family, but in reality, it was reserved for my parents, and for Lauren, and for whatever important guests they were entertaining. My spot. Well, I learned quickly that my spot was optional. I'd come to the table after a shift, and my father, Brian, I would already be pouring wine for a food critic or a local politician. He'd see me and say, "Oh, Scarlett, we're a little tight tonight. Just grab a stool at the bar. Would you?" My place setting, the unused place setting, was the first one to be cleared to make room. The napkin, the polished silverware, the empty water glass, all swept away in one smooth motion by a busboy. I learned to stop even trying to sit down. I learned that my presence was disposable. I'd just eat standing up in the kitchen, by the heat of the pass. Listening to their laughter float in from the dining room. The only person who ever saw me was my grandmother, Evelyn. She was the one who had started the restaurant from nothing. With just that leather-bound book of recipes, she'd been pushed to the side. 2. Once my parents decided her food wasn't modern enough for their new brand, she'd find me in the dry storage room, practicing my knife cuts on potatoes that were destined for the trash. She wouldn't say anything for a while. Just watch. Then she'd take the knife from my hand. "No, child," she'd say, her voice like rough silk. "Your wrist is too tight. Let the blade do the work." She taught me everything. How to clarify butter until it was liquid gold. How to build a sauce for 3 days until it was deep and complex. How to respect the old techniques. Don't you ever let them confuse style with skill? She'd whisper to me, while we shelled peas, "Your sister and your parents, they have style. It's loud. It's flashy. And it fades. You have skill. That stays." She was the reason I applied to the Culinary Institute in New York. She paid the first semester's tuition from her own small savings. "Go," she said. "Go build a table of your own." And now, here I was. The night before the final competition, I was exhausted, practicing the heritage stew, my hands aching, when my phone, which I'd turned back on, rang. It was Lauren. Her voice was bright and airy, like champagne bubbles. "Hey," she said. "You're really stressing Mom and Dad out. You know." I stopped stirring. "What are you talking about?" "Lauren, this whole competition thing. You're making them feel guilty. Tonight's wine launch is critical for my brand. The entire restaurant's success depends on me right now." I gripped the wooden spoon. "This is my final. This is for the golden whisk. This is important to me." Pause. Then I heard her laugh. A light, tinkling sound that always made my stomach clench. "Right. A school award. Scarlett. Come on. This is the real world. Just relax. Have fun with your little cooking project." She hung up. A little cooking project. I used to think it was just favoritism. But years later, I read about dysfunctional family psychology. I learned about the golden child and the scapegoat. In these broken systems, for the golden child like Lauren to exist, there has to be a scapegoat, someone to carry the family's burdens, to absorb the blame, to be the darkness, so the star can shine brighter. I wasn't just being overlooked. I was a necessary sacrifice. My failure, Miss Smallness, was required for her to be the main character. I looked at the bubbling pot of stew. Her words didn't make me sad. They made me cold. "A little cooking project," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "Okay. Let's see." The day of the competition, the air in the Institute's grand hall was electric. It smelled like hot steel, caramelized sugar, and pure terror. Famous judges, chefs I had only seen on television, walked between the stations in their perfect white coats, clipboards in hand. Live stream cameras from food blogs and culinary magazines hovered, capturing every frantic whisk, every nervous wipe of a brow. My best friend, Megan, stood in the small audience section. She'd flown to New York on her own dime. As I set up my station, she came over to the barrier. "You're the only one here without a cheering section," she whispered, her eyes scanning the other families holding signs. I glanced over at the 3 seats I had reserved near the front. One was for Megan. One was for Grandma Evelyn, who was too frail to travel, but had promised to watch the live stream. The third was for my parents. It was empty. I'm used to it, I said, my voice flat. I turned back to my station and laid out my knives. The timer started. For 3 hours. The kitchen was a blur of controlled chaos. To my left, a guy was using liquid nitrogen and creating foams. To my right, a woman was deconstructing a lemon tart into something that looked like abstract art. They were making the kind of food my sister Lauren would have called brilliant. The kind of food my parents desperately wished I would make. I just kept my head down. I braised. I simmered. I clarified butter, just like Grandma Evelyn had taught me, skimming the solids with a patience that felt ancient. I was making the peasant food from her notebook. The judges walked by my station. I could see the skepticism in their eyes, while others presented delicate towers and colorful gels. I was working with dark, rich, humble ingredients. One judge, a famous French chef known for his brutal critiques, just raised an eyebrow at my heavy cast iron pot and moved on. He didn't even ask what it was. With 10 seconds left, I plated. It wasn't flashy. It was the heritage stew. Deep and dark, with a perfectly seared piece of meat, glazed root vegetables, and a single, bright green herb on top. Time. We stepped back. The judges began their tasting. Moving down the line, I watched them nod politely at the foams and murmur, interesting at the deconstructed tart. Then the head judge, the brutal French one, came to my station. He stared at my plate for a long time. He dipped his spoon in, taking a small, almost disrespectful bite. And then he froze. He didn't speak. He just stood there, spoon halfway to his mouth. He closed his eyes. Then he opened them wide and looked directly at me. He took another, bigger bite. The entire hall went silent, watching him. The awards ceremony began an hour later. The finalists stood in a line on the stage. My knees shaking so hard, I thought I might fall over. Megan was in the front row, vibrating with excitement. The head judge walked to the podium, the lights dimming. This year was difficult, he began, his French accent thick. We saw much technique, many foams, many gels. He paused, looking at his notes. But technique without heart is just decoration. My breath caught. The winner of this year's Golden Whisk, he announced, is the dish that reminded us what food is truly about. It was not modern. It was not deconstructed. It was true. He looked up, his eyes finding mine in the lineup. The winner is Scarlet. I didn't hear it at first. The words didn't make sense. But then Megan screamed from the audience. A sound so loud, it cut through my daze. The other contestants politely clapped as I walked, numb, toward the stage. The judge handed me the heavy, gold-plated whisk trophy. It was cold in my trembling hands. He handed me the microphone. Your dish, young lady, he said, his voice softer now. It was authentic. It had a soul. Please, tell us about it. I stepped up to the microphone, my heart hammering against my ribs. The live stream camera's red light glowed. I knew my grandmother was watching. I knew my parents were not. Thank you, I said, my voice shaking just a little. This dish. It's a forgotten recipe. I looked right into that camera, right past it, to my family's restaurant, hundreds of miles away. It was my grandmother's recipe. For 20 years. I was told this kind of food was old-fashioned, that it was peasant food and not good enough for a modern brand. But today, it won. The audience was quiet. I could feel Megan crying. I grew up in a restaurant, at a big family table. I continued, the words coming faster now. But my spot at that table was always the unused place setting. I saw the head judge's eyes fix on me. It was the first one to be cleared away when someone, or something, more important, came along. I learned that I was disposable. That my presence didn't matter. Tonight, my family has something more important. They're at home, launching a new wine menu for my sister. They couldn't be here. I took a deep, shuddering breath and lifted the golden whisk. This speech. This is for anyone out there who has ever been made to feel like an unused place setting. For anyone who has been told to wait in the back, to be quiet, to be smaller, so someone else can be big. Stop waiting for an invitation to a table that never valued you. Stop trying to earn a seat that was never meant for you. I held the judge's gaze. Get in your own kitchen. Pick up your own tools. And build your own damn table. The fallout wasn't gradual. It was instant. Before I had even taken off my chef's coat, my phone, which I'd left in my locker, was vibrating so hard, it sounded like it was trying to escape. Megan ran up to me, her own phone out, her face pale and excited. Scarlett. You're everywhere, she stammered. She turned her screen to me. The Culinary Institute had posted the clip of my speech. It already had thousands of shares. Food and Wine magazine had reposted it. A major food blogger had reposted it. 2 hashtags were trending: number build your own table and number unused place setting. And then I saw the other notifications. My phone was exploding. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. All tumbling over each other in a cascade of panic. I opened the review page for my family's restaurant. It was a sea of 1-star ratings. The owner's daughter won a national award, and they skipped it to sell wine. Disgusting. I guess the Golden Child's wine menu pairs well with heartless parenting. Heard they have a special on the menu, the unused place setting. It's just an empty, tragique void. My phone rang again. This time I answered. It was Lauren. She wasn't speaking. She was sobbing. Hysterical. Gasping sobs. You? You ruined me, she shrieked. You ruined everything. My launch was a disaster. Everyone was on their phones, whispering and looking at me. They're calling me. They're calling me the Golden Child. I was silent. I just listened to her breathe. Why would you do that? Scarlett, you were always so quiet. Why would you do this to me? I didn't do anything to you. Lauren, I said. And my voice was so calm, it surprised me. I did it for me. I hung up. Not even 5 seconds later, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. Kimberly. Her voice wasn't sad. It was furious. Scarlett, I don't know what you think you just did, but you have to fix it. Right now. Fix what? Mom. This spectacle. You've embarrassed us. Our restaurant's reputation is in shreds. You made us look like monsters. You need to post a retraction. Say you were emotional. Say you misspoke. Say we're a loving family. I stood there in the echoing hallway of the Institute, the heavy golden whisk trophy in my other hand. I looked at its shining, gold-plated surface. I didn't make you look like anything. Mom, I said quietly. What did you say? She snapped. I just told the truth. You weren't there. The place setting was unused. The camera can't capture people who don't show up. She was so quiet I thought she'd hung up. Then, just a whisper. We didn't know it was this important. You never did, I said, and ended the call. My hands were shaking. But not from fear. It was from release. My phone buzzed one more time. I almost ignored it. But I saw the caller ID. Grandma Evelyn. I picked up. Her voice was quiet, crackling over the line. I watched the live stream. Child. I know. Grandma. There was a long pause. Just the sound of static. That recipe? She said. Her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. You did it just right. Thank you, Grandma. Scarlet, she said, and I heard her take a deep breath. You didn't just cook my food. You served my justice. A few weeks later, I invited them to my tiny New York apartment. My father, Brian, my mother, Kimberly, and my sister, Lauren. It wasn't a celebration. I didn't make them a feast. I made a simple pot of tomato soup and served it with toasted bread. We sat at me small, second-hand kitchen table. For a long time, the only sound was the scraping of spoons against ceramic bowls. They look smaller here, away from the theater of the restaurant, swallowed by the noise of the city. Finally, my father put his spoon down. He looked at his hands, then at me. His eyes were heavy. We didn't see, he said, his voice quiet, stripped of all its front of house's boom. We didn't see you. Scarlet. I nodded, taking a slow breath. I know. My mother looked like she wanted to make an excuse, to fill the silence with reasons, but she stayed quiet. Lauren just stared into her soup. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said, and the words were clean, without anger. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm done being invisible. I looked at each of them. From now on, you either show up, or you don't. The choice is yours. But the invitation, I said, will be on my terms, at my table. Later that night, after they'd left, I took the golden whisk trophy from its box. I hammered a single, sturdy nail into the plaster wall of my kitchen, right above the stove. I hung the whisk where I could see it every day. It wasn't a trophy from a war. It wasn't about revenge. It was a deed. It was the ownership papers for a life I had built for myself, from scratch. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt like you were on the sidelines of your own life, if you've ever felt like the unused place setting, this is my letter to you. Stop waiting for their applause. Your value is not built by their recognition. Find your own kitchen. Find the thing that only you can do. The thing they called old-fashioned, or too quiet, or not important. Pick up your own tools. Build your own table.